I've been using the new iPhone 15 for about 2 months now, and tell you what, in that period, I've experienced a fair amount from the heights of the new titanium build, being able to shoot in ProRes lock, to the action button, to the loss of overheating, not so good battery life. There's so much to unpack here. Buckle up and let's go for the ride. First things first, let's talk about what you get on the outside, and that's the design. One of the most talked about features of the iPhone 15 Pro was the titanium build, and even though the natural titanium was so alluring, I've always leaned towards the dark colored iPhones, hence the reason why I went for the black titanium. Speaking of black titanium, to be honest, I expected it to be a lot darker, but it's more or less the same color as the graphite of the previous Gen 14 Pro. While on the subject of expectations, the reduction of weight could be felt as expected of the titanium build, and holding the 14 Pro next to my 15 Pro, I can tell there's a slight difference. Another difference I've noticed is the reduction in bezels around the screen, and although not significant, it's always good to have more screen real estate, even if it's by an inch. And speaking of inches, a few were removed from the edges to make them rounder, and tell you what, my pinky has been absolutely loving it. For those who don't understand what I meant by that, holding the 14 and 15 Pro side by side, you can see the 14 Pro has much sharper edges, and when holding it for a considerable amount of time, after a while it digs into your pinky, but with the 15 Pro, none of that happened with the softer edges. You can also see that when you try to fit the 15 Pro cases on the previous Gen 14 Pro. Speaking of cases, the 15 Pro lineup looks amazing without one, but it's like playing with fire because of the consequences that can be disheartening. I'm sure we've all seen webbed out phones on the internet. Luckily for me, the closest I've got to that is a crack on my 13 camera lens, and that's exactly why I'd recommend getting a screen and lens protector. Moving along, a few inches from the pinky is the real highlight of the iPhone 15 Pro, and that's USB-C. I can't tell you how excited I was to finally see USB-C on the iPhone, and like most of you guys, during the early days I went through the rite of passage. Every time I wanted to use my iPhone, I got the Lightning cable instead of USB-C. Anyway, that aside, it's finally nice to have one cable for practically everything, thanks to our European brothers for pushing Apple to make that switch. On a side note, it would be good if Apple provided faster charging with USB-C, since we're still getting the 25 watts we got with the Lightning cables. Finally, on the design changes, I've also enjoyed using the action button over the last month or so, and while I have mine set with the camera, there's a myriad of customizations that can come out of it. That's actually a video in itself. Going under the hood, the powerhouse driving this phone is absolutely nice, more so from a phone perspective, and over the last month or so, I felt the difference from the 14 Pro, all because of the new A17 Pro chip. Now, before release, I thought it would be the A17 Bionic chip, but that name has been left with the previous gen iPhones and the regular iPhone 15s. If you'd ask me, I'm definitely not surprised, as that's Apple's classic way of enticing you to move a tier up. Being the first 3nm chip on any phone, its benchmarks are close to the M1 chip levels, which explains why it's 10 to 20% more powerful on both the CPU and GPU compared to the A16 Bionic chip. In saying that, iPhones have always been great for usual phone activities, be it surfing the internet, doom scrolling on Instagram or TikTok, so for the most part, you wouldn't notice an increase in power until you get into gaming, which by the way, traditionally has never been Apple's strong point, but with this new chip, we now see AAA games like Assassin's Creed Mirage, Resident Evil Village come to the iPhone, and to further prove the point, they're not downgraded mobile versions, it's the same exact as what you'd play on the PlayStation or Xbox. Now, tell me that's not real power. Anyway, we'll dive deeper into that when we get to gaming. Moving along, we can't talk about performance without mentioning their iOS version. At the time of release, it came with iOS 17, and a few weeks later, issues surrounding overheating popped up on most people's iPhones, and Apple claimed it was a bug from apps, and after an iOS upgrade, the overheating issue disappeared. At the time of this recording, I'd just updated to iOS 17.2, and I'm quite excited with the new features, starting with spatial video for the Apple Vision Pro. This basically enables you to record videos on your iPhone and watch them back in 3D on the Apple Vision Pro, and this is what it would look like. Moving along, we also see a change in the App Store, and when you get into it, you'll see we've got different categories at the top with little glyph icons, which makes it easy when looking for apps. Let's say you're looking for productivity apps, you just click on productivity and they pop up, narrowing the scope as opposed to when you search the entire store. Moving along, the camera is a perfect segue to performance as it's also notched up in that same regard. Now, for the average consumer, you might not notice the difference, putting in mind the outside looks exactly the same as the last 3 generations of the Pro iPhones, but on the inside, there's a lot at play on the software side of things and very subtle changes of the hardware. To put it into perspective, I noticed a difference in reduction of lens flares, a lot more light coming in when using the ultra-wide camera, and holding it side by side with the 14 Pro, you can clearly see that, but that's not what makes the iPhone 15 Pro camera outstanding. When we delve into the intricacies, that's when the real magic comes to the surface. To kick us off, the 15 Pro now takes 24 megapixel photos, and I know you'll say, that's nothing compared to the 200 megapixels of the S23 Ultra, and my answer to that would be 24 megapixels is now the iPhone standard without any compromise to the dynamic range, post-processing or any shutter lag. Now, for even more perspective, the S23 Ultra has a 200 megapixel lens, but all that is pixel binned to just 12 megapixels. I know you'll say the photos almost look similar, and I agree with you. From afar they almost look the same, but there's actually a difference. Using these photos from my 15 Pro and 14 Pro, I'll demonstrate that. Like mentioned a few seconds ago, when you look at them from afar, you don't see anything, but when zoomed in, that's where you notice the difference. As you can see, the farther you zoom in, the more you notice the difference in quality. Apple choosing to switch to the HEIF file format has been an absolute game changer, especially when it comes to storage space. Now, for the longest time, the file format has always been JPEG across different phones, and even though there's no difference in terms of quality, when it comes to file size, HEIFs are almost half the size, and for a content creator like myself, that's absolute joy when shooting thumbnails or just day-to-day photos. The most fascinating part about this file format, even though the image quality has gone up, the file size increased by just 1.5, and it doesn't stop there. In that small file, you still get the portrait and live photo data, which is crucial for depth perception. Speaking of portrait data, now you don't have to be in portrait mode to get all that shallow depth of field. Once you've taken your photo, you can adjust your focus on what you want the subject to exactly be and bring out that bokeh for that perfect cinematic photo. I've also enjoyed the different focal lengths added to the main camera. From only having 24mm, now we have a tight 28mm and an even tighter 35mm lens in the mix. When it comes to video, Apple continues to stay ahead of the pack, and that can clearly be seen in the quality of the 15 Pro videos. And to put that into context, Apple's Scary Fast event was entirely shot on the iPhone 15 Pro, which goes to show you how good this camera is. To add to that, you can now shoot in log, which is basically a flat color profile, and then color grade it in post. The catch is you have to plug in an SSD because of the size of the log files. Personally, I prefer making my work easy and not shooting in log, but every now and then I'll do so. When it comes to gaming, like mentioned earlier, Apple in general has finally caught up to the rest of the market, all thanks to the A17 Pro chip. Games like Assassin's Creed Mirage, Resident Evil Village, just to name but a few, play with so much ease on the iPhone 15 Pro. Again, like mentioned earlier, these are not mobile versions, and you'll be playing exactly what's on the Xbox or PlayStation console, and that's simply impressive. On the flip side though, it's not as fun playing with the controls on the screen. That's why using an external controller like that of the PlayStation is a lot more comfortable. In my opinion, the backbone is the most ideal when it comes to controllers because it's not too bulky, and packing it when you're traveling around is a lot easier. Moving along, with all the new camera functionalities and gaming prowess, it definitely needs a good battery to be efficient, and after a few weeks, complaints about overheating were flying around the tech grapevine, and this caught many people by surprise. At the time, Apple insisted that the overheating issue was because of a software bug and not the new hardware or design in the iPhone 15 Pro model. Personally, mine wasn't that bad, and Apple eventually sorted it out with a software update. As for the longevity of the battery, it's a lot better than my 14 Pro, but a tad bit behind my 13 Pro. To be honest, I find this a bit surprising, putting in mind the 15 Pro comes with a bigger battery capacity, better heat dissipation and better optimized software. Carrying on that surprise trend, despite all these improvements and the switch to USB-C, the charging speeds are more or less the same, but the silver lining is it's now got power delivery and you can charge anything that's rechargeable and can plug a USB-C. When it comes to accessories, the only dent from an Apple perspective was getting rid of their leather cases and adopting the fine woven, which to be honest hasn't been up to scratch, and you can see that from the many complaints of netizens. Luckily, third-party suppliers always come to the rescue. For example, the one I'm currently using is from Bellroy and it's absolutely class. If you're keen, I'll leave a link in the description box. There are also plenty of other cases on Amazon and you can get for as low as $20. With the 15 Pro now able to shoot ProRes log, companies are already making accessories, but a quick fix for now is attaching a MagSafe ring at the back of your SSD and you'll be good to go. After using it for about 2 months, I'd say it's been worth it, more so from a creator's perspective with the ability to now shoot log. For the average consumer, it's not a must buy if you're just looking for a daily driver to perform normal phone tasks like browsing the internet, make phone calls, take notes, just to name but a few. And if you've got the 13 or 14 Pro, there's no need to buy. For someone with the iPhone 12 or older, this would be a worthy upgrade. Well, there you have it. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, share and click the notification bell to get notified whenever I post a new video. To see another review of my Apple devices, check out this video. Till then, people of the internet, I'm signing out. See you on the next one.